Have you ever wondered what was out there in the night sky? Stared up at the stars in the hopes of seeing something out of the ordinary? Have you ever heard unexplainable noises coming from a vacant room, or watched a shadow cross the wall in front of you? Have you asked yourself if there's life after this one, or if you had life before? What about strange creatures that are mythical and elusive? Have you experienced deja vu, or felt a prompting to leave because you felt you were in danger? What if tomorrow you were on the fringe? Welcome to another episode of On the Fringe. I'm Philip.
And I'm Mark.
And tonight, again, continuing our series that we kind of started last week, talking about ancient history, hidden artifacts, out of place artifacts, different things like that. We've got Pam and Jess with us. Welcome, ladies.
Hi. Thanks for having us.
Oh, anytime. You know that. Really, you're a permanent fixture here, so you don't really have the option anymore.
Don't worry.
You.
Anyway, we'll get this out of the way real quick. Do us a favor. Check us out at our website, whatiftomorrowmedia.com. We've got our affiliates over there, all the links. We've got our merchandise, all that stuff. If you want to help support the show, we're affiliates. We've got Conflicted, the game. Check out code WHATIF. We've got My Patriot Supply. We've got EMP Shield, and we have Duke Cannon. Also, we just started here, I don't know, a month or so ago with Buy Me a Coffee. You know, if you guys want to you don't want to support, there's nothing there. You guys want to support, reach out and buy us a coffee, and it's buymeacoffee.com, what if tomorrow, or / what if tomorrow. Any support would be appreciated. That'll all go to the show and help us produce better content. Hello, good evening. I'm a Facebook user. Hey,
Cecilia.
Oh, that's my mom. Hi, Mom. Moving on, we have a lot of ground to cover. Jess and Pam worked really hard doing a lot of the research. We're just talking backstage. Hey, Chris. Talking backstage,
Hi, Chris.
and they put a ton of work into this. Couldn't really decide which way we wanted to go, but we've all kind of leaned more towards Egyptian artifacts being found here in the United States. It's hard to name just one. Pam, Jess, I mean, you guys, I think for me, the one I knew the most about was in the Grand Canyon.
That's a big one.
And it is a big one.
That's where we can start.
Yeah, I'm good with it. I'll read the article real quick. This was in 1909. Says the article from the Arizona Gazette newspaper. It broke the story, and the work was under the direction of Professor S.A. Jordan of the Smithsonian. Remember that word. And was being expanded to a team of some 30 to 40 archaeologists. The cavern was nearly a mile underground, about 1,480 feet below the surface. The long main passage had been delved into to find another mammoth chamber from which radiate scores of passageways like the spokes of a wheel. Several hundred rooms have been discovered, reached by passageways running from the main passage. One of them had been explored for 854 feet and another for 634 feet. The recent finds include articles which have never been known as native in this country, and doubtless that they had their origin in the Orient. Now, mind you, this is 1909 terminology. War weapons, copper instruments, sharp-edged, and hard as steel indicate the high state of civilization reached by these strange people. The riches found within were fabulous. The idol or image of the people's god sitting cross-legged with a lotus flower or lily in each hand. The cast of the face is oriental. The idol almost resembles Buddha, though the scientist is not certain as to what religious worship it represents. It is possible that this worship most resembles the ancient people of Tibet. Among the other finds are vases, urns, and cups of copper and gold made very artistic in design, and also dangers reminiscent of the day's best Pulp Fiction. I'm kind of quoting the article here too. There's one chamber of the passageway which is not ventilated, And when we approached it, a deadly snaky smell struck us. Our light would not penetrate the gloom, and until stronger ones are available, we will not know what the chamber contains. Some say snakes, but others boo-hoo this idea and think it may contain a deadly gas or chemicals used by the ancients. It is located on government land, and no visitor will be allowed under the penalty of trespass. The scientists wish to work unmolested. A trip there would be fruitless, and the visitors would be sent on his way. And I'll leave the article there. But notice the Smithsonian's involved, and this was over 100 years ago now. Everything has been closed down. Everything has been hidden, locked away. Everybody's denying. I watched a video of this today, and the guy actually called the Smithsonian and got through to them, and it was all plausible deniability. They were, we get this question a few times a year. What was in there? Nothing was in there. Nothing of record. All that.
Then why won't they let anyone in there?
Right. Yeah, now you can't go in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they won't let aircraft fly below the rim,
right?
Unless they're government aircraft.
Yep. And it's supposed to be a no-fly zone, and there was a couple of people out there exploring, and they noticed the aircraft were flying below the rim of the canyon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Scott Walton from History Channel.
Yep.
Saw the same thing.
Yeah.
So.
So why the secrecy? Go ahead, Jess.
Well, I have something very interesting to add to all of this. It's really, really interesting, actually. I have this book called Mound Builders, Edgar Casey's Forgotten Record of Ancient America. Let me show everybody right there.
Cool.
Okay.
Can you, for those that don't know, Jess, can you explain who Edgar Casey is?
Oh gosh,
just a quick synopsis.
Edgar Casey was kind of like the Nostradamus of our time, basically. Yep. He made predictions, sleeping prophecies, was a big believer in angels and the likes, and just basically our everyday Nostradamus is who he was. And he made thousands of predictions, many of which have come true. So he's kind of considered to be an authority on a lot of stuff. But he actually did an entire session where he talked about Egyptians, ancient Egyptians being in the Americas. And I ran onto something while I was kind of skimming down through that. And I'm just going to read it verbatim from the book because it's amazing. The Casey readings told of several ancient Egyptian excursions to America, including to the southwest U.S., as well as several other contacts to Central and South America. And there is threads of evidence for this. The most amazing possible confirmation of Casey's contention about Egyptians in the Grand Canyon area comes from what could have been as a remarkable coincidence. On April 27th, 1991, the Flagstaff, Arizona Daily Sun published a long article detailing an unusual find in northern Arizona. At the April meeting of the Society of American Archaeology in New Orleans, 3 archaeologists working for the state announced that they had found a series of catacombs containing ceremonial chambers 2 miles west of Springerville. They found the catacombs while working to establish the area as a recreational park. They believed the tunnels and chambers were constructed by the Mongolian Indians circa 700, 800 years previous, because the site is near a known Mongolian complex. However, no other chambers or tunnels are known to have been built by this culture. The entrances to the catacombs were hidden and could only be accessed by rappelling down a canyon wall. The entrances were the size of a small doorway or narrow crawl space. The interior catacombs were an incredible 3 to 4 acres in extent, with rooms 50 feet high and 100 feet long. There were no articles or artifacts of note in the catacombs, and nothing like this has been found in North America. The site is known as Casa Malpais. It is now a park, but the catacombs are not accessible. The possible connection of this site to Egypt is a fascinating story. David Hatcher Childress, a prolific author, traveler, and founder of the World Explorers Club, found a forgotten front page story in the April 5th, 1909 issue of the Phoenix Gazette. There is no doubt whatsoever that this story was published. The article stated that an expedition funded by the Smithsonian and led by S.A. Jordan had found a series of tunnels and chambers in the Grand Canyon. Inside the catacombs, a huge number of Egyptian artifacts were found. Mummies, gold, and copper artifacts, idols, statues, and hieroglyphic writings were recovered, seemingly indicating that it had once been an Egyptian temple. Access could only be gained by rappelling down a steep canyon wall. The artifacts were removed. The site discovered and reported by archaeologists. Excuse me, I skipped a line. The descriptions of the catacombs in the 1909 story are essentially identical to the site discovered and reported by archaeologists in 1991. The 1991 group apparently found no artifacts in the catacombs, which could indicate that someone had removed them at a prior time. Childress recently contacted the Smithsonian, but was told no Egyptian artifacts had ever been recovered in the Americas. The Smithsonian also had no knowledge. Yeah. Also had no knowledge of S.A. Jordan. Childress suggests that the Smithsonian is involved in covering up the story, but there is a much more plausible possibility. This is a fascinating story indeed. The descriptions of the 1909 and 1991 sites seem identical. If the mysterious S.A. Jordan existed and found gold and other Egyptian artifacts in the catacombs, is it possible he gathered them and quietly moved them into obscurity for monetary reasons? The 1909 article states that the story came to the attention of reporters after Jordan and his helpers arrived at Phoenix, immediately after gathering artifacts at the site. It is conceivable that the individuals involved had looted the valuable remains at the site. While they had no connections to the Smithsonian, they made this claim to the eager reporters when they were questioned. This would have given them the air of authority and removed suspicions. In all probability, fake names were given. So there's a little bit extra we didn't know about that.
Yeah, I hadn't read that.
That is very interesting.
So it's there, and it's apparently was found again, but this time empty.
Well, Jordan, the first one that found it, when the Smithsonian was contacted later, they said that he didn't work with them and they didn't know who he was too, which was interesting right off the bat. So who knows what happened to him? Maybe he did loot it and take off, but they would have said that he worked for them, I would think. I don't know.
Maybe not. They don't want to be embarrassed.
That's what I was just thinking after I said that. Well, maybe not. Yeah, could be.
Or the Smithsonian had him remove everything out of it.
Yeah, that's a good,
And then disappeared him.
Probably for a great deal of money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there you go.
People do not want this stuff to get out.
They don't.
And then they want to discredit it as hard as possible.
They do.
Yep.
All right, Pam, I'm going to let you take one because I've got to go do something real fast.
Okay. Where do we want to go from here?
Illinois, maybe.
To Illinois. I don't have that much on Illinois. I have some on Iowa.
Let's do Iowa then.
Oh, let's do it.
Do Iowa? All right. This mostly I'm working out of Berry Fells, America, BC. And what he ran across was really interesting. I lost my notes. Hang on. I have too many. Here we go. Okay. So what they found, what got him started in this area was the fact that this, they called it the Davenport steel or the Davenport calendar. This had showed up. We're talking about Iowa real quick, Jess. Out of Berry Fell. They ran across this. He ran across this thing. It was called the Davenport calendar. It's actually in a museum right now, but the curator will not let anyone see it and has not let anyone see it for quite a while, because even though they say it's fake, they don't want anyone looking at it. And Mark, that's the That's the picture that I sent you, is the Davenport steel.
All right.
And basically what
me-
this thing ended up being, while you're pulling that up, I can talk about it a little bit. When they found it, they did not realize, number one, that part of what was on there was Egyptian hieroglyphs. They knew that there were a couple of languages on there, but they didn't know what they were, so they could not interpret it. I don't know if we can you pull that in any to show it?
There we go. How's that?
Okay. Yeah, that'll work. Okay. So
The other page has pictures of the writing, I believe.
Yeah, the other page kind of shows how similar the three languages are, or the two languages are.
Right.
So the Egyptian portion of it, the hieroglyphs weren't noticed at the time on this stone. And so they couldn't interpret it at the time. Had they realized that it was hieroglyphs, they would have been able to interpret it back in the 1800s when it was found. What it ended up being was the other languages. Oh no. You ever have too many notes?
All the time.
Okay, the other languages were Libyan was one.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the other one? I'm sorry, I'm choking on this here.
Oh, that's okay.
And there was one other language. I'm not
the Iberian.
Yes, Libyan and Iberian.
It's on the bottom of the screen here.
And the really cool part about all of that was, they said immediately, oh, it's a fake. This is a fake, because when they went to read it, what they interpreted it to say was that, let's see, the Libyan or the Egyptian text giving literally in captions may be rendered in English as follows. To a pillar, attach a mirror in such a manner that when the sun rises on the New Year's Day, it will cast a reflection onto the stone called the Watcher. New Year's Day occurs when the sun is in conjunction with the zodiacal constellation Aries in the house of the Ram, the balance of night and day being about to reverse. At this time, it's the spring equinox. Hold the festival of the New Year and the religious rite of the New Year. So when they figured out that it was hieroglyphics, that's what they determined it to say. And they didn't even know how to read Libyan until 1974. So that's why it was not interpreted before then. But I think it's interesting how they're like, oh, it's a fake back in the 1800s. But these other languages have been proven to be correct and written correctly. And not only that, this rite was found, I think it was in a crypt or Egyptian burial in Thebes, I think is where they found the same, and it's called Jed, the ceremony of Jed, which is basically the spring equinox. But I think it's fascinating that they found this calendar. They found the way to interpret it, to read it, and more than likely, what Barry Fell feels is that it probably came over with astrologists from, way back when. And they were like, okay, take this with you because this is how you're going to be able to tell time, throughout the year when you're in this other land. You're going to be able to make your time fit with what our time is here.
Well, that goes back to the Annals of Kentucky.
Mm-hmm. It does.
And then when you look at the stuff from Burroughs Cave, which a lot of that was fake, he was making up a lot of stuff. But there were a few artifacts that they have determined were real.
Yes.
And the going theory on that is that 2,050 years ago, approximately, when Rome invaded Egypt and conquered it, that the son of Cleopatra and Mark Antony, I think it was Alexander Helios,
yes,
and 50,000 of his followers came to America and sailed up the Mississippi. And
the Arkansas.
And Arkansas. I don't mean they'd gone right through there. And a lot of these artifacts are found near the Mississippi or its tributaries like the Arkansas River.
Yeah, which makes perfect
Mhm.
sense because, the way that they got around was by ship almost everywhere. That was the major way of
And
transportation for over any distance.
and they've proven that Egyptian barks were seaworthy enough to make the crossing.
Mm-hmm.
And they're low draft, so they're perfect for going up a river.
Yes.
And that's also compounded with the fact that they have found Egyptian hieroglyphs in Australia and found that those were authentic.
That's cool.
So,
Yeah.
I mean,
They're everywhere.
Mhm.
There is not one state that doesn't have Egyptian hieroglyphs in it somewhere. About what Pam was talking about, the solstice calendar, I've actually found 3 more petroglyphs in the US that are also solstice. And it seems like they're all made for every season. There's one petroglyph per season. There's one in Russellville in Arkansas. That's a winter solstice. There's one in Inyo, California. That is a spring solstice. The Anubis caves that we talked about in one of the last podcasts, it holds the fall solstice. And the summer solstice is in it's called the Alabama Hills Solar Site. And this thing is amazing. And they've actually completely translated the hieroglyphs. And it is the most precise sounding directions that I've ever heard. And I actually wrote them down so you guys could hear these. Because you see all these symbols and you're like, what the heck could that mean? And it's amazing how much they can deduce down from them. So they found this in 1982. And the amazing thing about this site is it also holds a Chinese symbol. It has a yin yang in it.
Cool.
So
weird.
whoever wrote this, whether Egyptian or an Egyptian influenced community, they were also influenced by the Chinese. So the translation for this is, behold, on the other side of this wide, spacious valley, beyond the rim of the lake, the triangulated mount of sunrise. To be prepared for the festival of the new year, keep watch here at the dawn for the flyer to rise when Ra leaves the sign of Gemini and enters the sign of Cancer. When Gemini is passed in the annual circuit of the heavens, the child twists and his path turns the other way. The giant step is made when the path has transited the first celestial house and entered the second. There it turns away from people. Isn't that amazing?
That's cool. Yes.
And it works just like the caves does. It has a line of path that the setting sun or the rising sun follows, and it tells its story. The same with the other ones that I mentioned. That is some old world stuff.
You might let everybody know too. If you watch America Unearthed, and Jess had found this for us the other day, it's season 1, episode 5. It's called A Deadly Sacrifice. They actually have the Anubis caves on there, and they have them at solstice, and it shows exactly the path. And it's so cool.
It is cool.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I wish they hadn't just focused on the one cave. I wish they had shown all of them, because there's 5.
Yeah. There's a lot of neat stuff.
Amazing.
That's the one with Scott Walton, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll be right back.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of him. He kind of likes to play dumb.
And he gets hung up on everything goes back to the Knights Templar. Everything goes back to that. And
a lot of it does, yeah.
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 He's a huge
I
fan of
warn
that.
anybody, the series is amazing because it brings to light so many things that have been kind of pushed down and tucked away from normal everyday people. But I do take it with a grain of salt. He really dumbs things down, and he makes connections to things that have nothing to do with each other solely for the drama for TV. But just watch it to see what artifacts they are showing you.
And there's some pretty
rather
good
than taking
theories
it.
presented.
He does present some
There
good
is, but there's also some crap
like
put together.
like
Yeah, I've
with
seen some of that
everything-
too.
Like with everything, take from
Yeah.
it what you will and do your own research on it, and see what
Absolutely.
make
Yeah.
your own conclusions, draw your own conclusions.
Yeah, some of it makes no sense, and some of it makes perfect sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if
I'm
you
ready
And
to go
also
to-
on that episode, is the Abus
Mhm.
the Abus bull that came out of the Arkansas River in Tulsa.
Yes.
That was the first time I got to see it. I've studied on it. I've heard about it, but I'd never actually gotten to see it. So that right there was amazing, just to be able to actually see it in full.
yeah, it was a really nice carving.
And to know where it came from. You guys want to hear something cool?
Mhm.
And it involves Tulsa is the only reason I'm bringing it up. And it's not Egyptian. So I apologize now, but I ran across this and it was pretty exciting. This is okay. Rafinesque was the dude that wrote the Annals of Kentucky that we talked a lot about last week. And this came from Donald Yates, and he is a DNA expert. And so basically what they're doing, they're going back through Rafinesque's information and starting to prove it with DNA. And in the back of this article that I found, they talk about Turkey Mountain in Tulsa. And I thought it was fun because it says, let's see. I'll just start at the middle of a sentence because the first part of it really isn't important. Ethiopian view of history derived from the Amharic Book of Jubilees, a party of Gaelic-speaking Japhethites who were of lighter complexions and Canaanite-speaking Hamites who were dark-skinned, made a surveying expedition to the New World soon after the fall of Babel. Excuse me. As is evidence in the petroglyphs found on Turkey Mountain near Tulsa in present-day Oklahoma. There, exactly on the 36th parallel, found the Canaanite word, I'm going to say it wrong probably, Paya, P-Y-A-A, and above it the old Celtic word Gwyn, G-U-I-N. Both words signified the same in both languages. They mean white or whites. In other words, the site was to serve as a boundary marker between the white nations of Japheth to the north and the darker nations of Ham to the south. The word Gwyn still means white or fair in Welsh today. So I thought that was pretty.
Yeah, the Ogden riding at Turkey Mountain.
Yes.
And that's along the Arkansas.
It is along the Arkansas. Yes, it's right there.
There's a really good point to be made in what Pam just said. Going back, we were talking about the TV show and about, watching it, but taking it for a grain of salt about what's said. So in that episode where they were talking about the Abus bull and the Anubis caves, they made a connection that the Gwyn on Turkey Mountain was written as an explorer from an old Celtic explorer named Gwyn, and that it must have just been him that brought all of that in there. And it's absolutely false. There wasn't there was lots of explorers, and the explorer they're talking about, part of his name was a Gwyn, and it wasn't even spelled that way. So I can't imagine he climbed his tush all the way up there to the side of that mountain and wrote his name wrong.
Right?
If I was an explorer, though, I would be carving my name on every rock that didn't move.
I'll tell you what,
I would be too.
Honestly, that's how they left their mark, to show that they had been places. And
I would have a stencil to chisel my name in.
Exactly. That's the truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that case in point right there, not everything that man says is true. He loves to make connections where there isn't one.
He does,
and he'll lead
really
you in the wrong direction so that at the end he can show you what was really true and then, make it more exciting.
Right.
So just take it for a grain of salt.
And that's a lot
of your
what
own study
on some of those.
But it is interesting. You can follow.
It's exciting to watch.
Mississippi up to the Arkansas.
Yes.
Up to Turkey Mountain, and then follow different rivers clear over there by the Anubis caves.
Mm-hmm.
And also the you can go right up to Illinois, where the Burroughs Cave is supposed to be.
Yes.
So,
and that's too bad about the Burroughs Cave. I mean, because they said if he did pull stuff that was actually gold out of there, he admittedly melted it down and used it as, to sell. And that's sad.
I mean,
It's sad.
Terrible.
it's greed, human greed.
It is. And
He would have made a lot more money with the original artifacts, charging people
he
to
would have.
look at them.
Yes.
Yeah, short-sighted,
Yeah.
but it's human. It's
It
very
is.
human.
Human suck.
I can't really blame him. If
Right.
I was in deep financial trouble, or even if I wasn't in deep financial trouble, it'd be very tempting. Oh, let's just melt that crap down, and
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
it's a lot easier to move that
So
way.
talking about actual objects before we head into the mountains and mountains of hieroglyphic petroglyphs, let's talk about actual Egyptian artifacts that have been found. I found a handful. I didn't go too deep into it because we'd be here all day. But I found some very interesting ones. In the early 1900s in Libertyville, Illinois, it's about 20 miles north of Chicago, they found an Egyptian mortuary statuette. Very, very old. It was discovered by a young man, a son of a farmer. He liked to go arrowhead hunting around the banks of the Des Plaines River. And there is also, sadly, Indian burial grounds there, some mounds, and he would go digging through those. Bad parenting. And he would bring back stuff that he found. And this very old mortuary statuette was one of the things that he brought back. Later on, he actually turned it into the local museum. I guess he started feeling bad about all the looting he was doing when he was little. But that piece, they accused him of stealing it from somewhere because it was obviously older than even the mounds that it had supposedly come out of. But where I think he was 8 when he found it.
Yeah.
Where an 8-year-old boy would have gotten into a museum to steal it is beyond me.
Yeah.
Right. And somebody would have reported it.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been a valuable object. Now,
Oh yeah, they would have claimed it in a heartbeat.
but if you look
Absolutely.
at it, if this was the western annex of the Atlantean Empire, which possibly touched every shore of the world during its travels, it would make perfect sense for it to be over here.
Mm-hmm. There's Gloria
would.
Farley. She actually said in one article that I found on her that she had recorded an artifact that was an Egyptian sphinx that was found buried in an Indian site. And she did say that the article about this will be published in volume 24 of the Epigraphic Society occasional publications. And that's some stuff I really want to get my hands on. I haven't been able to find it yet. Affordable anyway.
It all boils down to money, doesn't it, sometimes?
Yes, and my firstborn son will not allow me to sell him for it. So
Such a buzzkill.
I know, right?
Such a buzzkill.
Another piece that I found, which I think is actually absolutely amazing. In 1918 in Idaho, a girl found a carved stone egg. And her family actually had taken it to like a local college to have it looked at and found out that it was pure alabaster. And it had carvings on it. And when they looked at it, they realized that one side was an engraving of King Tut's high priest. And the other side was King Tut's cartouche.
Oh wow.
Oh, wow.
Now,
that was in Idaho.
Yeah. Idaho, 1918. Now, here's the kicker. It's not as if that could have been stolen and brought back and dropped off because Tut's tomb wasn't found until 1922.
I was going to say 21, but it was 22. So that
That's
was 4 years
1922.
before.
Holy cow.
That's
cool.
pretty awesome.
So it's not
I
as
have
if
one,
that
too.
thing just got picked up and then brought into the, into
No,
the
there's
U.S.
no
and
way.
dropped off.
Yeah.
So
Let's
this
just
one,
throw-
Yeah.
An alabaster is pretty valuable, isn't it?
yeah,
Yes.
for sure.
It's very
not that-
valuable.
Especially back then, it wasn't a common thing to have.
So it's very delicate.
So yes, this comes out, and I'm blind, and this is small writing here. So out of Long Island, New York, this was a piece of shell. They called it a shell midden at Eagle Neck Orient at the eastern tip of Long Island. Until now, it was supposed to that it was a Indian petroglyph recording a hunting trip, but it's never been considered spurious. And indeed, the Libyan inscription, which is what ended up being on it, and it was found in 1888. So I don't know if you can see that. It just doesn't look like a whole lot. But when they got to reading it, it's Libyan inscription. It matches the Egyptian inscription to the left of it. And it could not have been forged, for Libyan was not deciphered until 1973. So that one is real. It was found in 1888 and couldn't even be deciphered in Libyan until,
Our
1970.
ancestors, everybody's ancestors, got around a lot more than people think.
Yes. And I mean, there is, they're like, well, there's no proof. There is proof. They just don't want to call it proof. They want to call it false. Even when you look at it and you can tell by the ages, of when it was found, that it is definitely, from that time period. And
Even
it's
by
genuine.
accident, there should be, it would not be unheard of for a storm at sea to blow a ship halfway across the freaking ocean.
Oh, but it gets better, Mark. Listen to what what it says. It says the Egyptian text is translated as a ship's crew from Upper Egypt made this steel with respect to their expedition. And then the Libyan text, once they were able to interpret it, the ship is a vessel from Egyptian dominions. So they said the same thing in two different languages. And so basically they came to where Long Island is now, carved this and said, we're leaving this here for posterity. So somebody knows that we were here once upon a time.
Right. Like I said, they have proved, and I'll have to look that up, and maybe I'll post it on the group later this week. They have proved that those Egyptian barks were seaworthy. I mean, they found a buried one at the foot of one of the pyramids. I mean, it is a seaworthy ship. Now, I wouldn't want to cross in it myself,
right?
Because it looked pretty.
We've advanced in ways to get around in ships, so I would trust that more these days.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. And have a good streak, guys. I thought he was inviting me to steak there for a second. I didn't see the R. I was like, all right, Levi, you can buy me some steak.
Is he wanting us to streak through naked or something? Or?
Nobody wants to see me streak anywhere. I don't even want to see that.
Okay. This conversation.
You can turn your camera off, Mark.
Here's one.
Let's go back.
Yeah. Let's dig out of that hole and go check this out real quick. Contrary to this is Gloria Farley. Contrary to most historical records, seaworthy ships filled with old world people swarmed both the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans even before Christ. One of these voyages by the Chinese in 2225 BC is proven because they returned to China and left records of America, some of which still exist.
I mean, everybody wants everything to be chiseled in stone. It's not.
No, it's not.
People got around. It's one planet. People get around it.
She was asked the question. Many, perhaps most mainstream historians and archaeologists have a hard time giving much credence to evidence of old world pre-Columbian visitors to the New World. Why did Gloria think this was the case? And she said, because they have already published otherwise and think it would be fatal to their careers to renege on their former beliefs. What PhD is going to say, I was wrong, and this self-educated female over here is right. And, you know, some of these guys spend their life.
To that.
Yeah, some of these guys spend their life on this stuff. And when it's proven otherwise, they don't want to lose, you know, their posterity. What work they're going to leave after they're gone is worthless, basically, at that point.
Well, and let's push it the other way. They have found mummies in Egypt that had traces of hashish, tobacco, and cocaine in their skin and hair and bones. And that only comes from the New World.
And they found copper from one Michigan mine that only comes in that percentage of alloys in it from that specific Michigan mine.
So there was trade, there was mining, and we can prove it.
Yeah, up around Wells and in that area up through there, you know, they've run across some mummies, and they were like, oh, well, look, they figured out how to mummify people on their own. No, these were more than likely travelers that were going through that, you know, this is what they knew. This is how they handled their dead. And
so this is
where they died.
There's a reason why there are pyramids all the way up the Americas into the US and up into Canada too. That's not a mistake. That's not, they figured out how to do the exact same thing later on. That was something that was being passed around because we were doing trade. There's a reason why they found American tobacco in Europe. There's a reason why they have found Chinese herbs and things in the US. We did trade.
Tobacco beetles,
to think that
specific ones from the United States have been found in Egypt and all these different places too.
Yeah, so everybody traded. That has never changed. We always have, and we always will until we're done and probably restart over again. So it would be ridiculous to think that you wouldn't. I have a few more little small ones. In 1956 in California, a woman was out hiking and found a bronze belt completely covered in hieroglyphs. It was like sticking out of the dirt. She saw it shining. Yeah. They assumed she probably pulled it from maybe a burial site or something, but she couldn't quite point out exactly where it had come from along her hiking path. She kind of just got excited about it, grabbed it and dug it out and took it with her. And when she had to bring people back, she was like, I think it was somewhere along in here. But it was very, very old.
Yay.
Yeah. And then I have 2 coins. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask. I mean, this makes me think in some ways, there was a worldwide civilization. You know, whether it be Egyptian.
I don't think it was a civilization. I think that they went up the rivers. They came up probably underneath Louisiana, traveled up the Mississippi, and like Mark said, took the Arkansas, took the Ohio River, the tributaries, and they did exploring and they did trading. And along the route, I think they moved in on some of these Indian tribes and things that were in there, made friendly, left them some information, taught them some things, and moved along with many, many other cultures of stuff I'm finding. I mean, so many cultures have left things here and markers and graffiti and, you know, I think that's really, I don't know if the Egyptians actually built anything here and like set up shop for a while.
Right.
I would think if they had, we would really have a site already.
Yeah.
Because they were so prolific in rock. Really, I think we would have found something that really pointed that way. And maybe we have, and we have not been told.
Who knows?
I mean, they're not going to tell us about the little artifacts. So maybe.
Right.
I don't think they did.
If you think about it, I mean, if you look at down in Central and South America, the number of pyramids and things that have been taken over by the jungle. Granted, we don't have a jungle here, but we have a lot of forest land.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, it's just a thought. You know, I'm not saying it
Mhm.
is or it isn't,
Well,
but
some of these mounds might have been dirt pyramids.
Yeah. You know,
Mhm.
something else that I ran across that I thought was an interesting thought too was they call them mound builders here in the Americas, North and South America. But in Egypt, they were called pyramids. And the difference is that they felt because a pyramid sounds like a really well thought out, well planned out, and prolific civilization built this. You know, so these are good people and everything. These are smart people and really ahead of the curve, basically. If you call them mound builders, that makes you feel like they're not as big of a deal, you know,
right.
and that kind of assuaged the European ego when we came over and took the lands from the mound builders. We're not taking them from this great civilization that we're conquering. We're moving in and helping, you know, these
And,
people that need help because they are not
It's all how you
civilized.
spin it.
Right.
well,
And
Yep.
that's yes,
if
that's
you look back, there
right.
was a lot of European arrogance. There was a lot of arrogance from the Christian church
Mm-hmm.
because they did not want to. They did not want to admit that there was any other kind of civilization anywhere. They're all savages.
Yes, exactly. Because if you call them savages, then if you go in and take over and force them into your religion and your way of life, then you're doing good. You know, you're not the bad guy
No,
in the
and a
story.
lot of this was done to assuage their own guilt
Hmm.
because they knew what they were
Mhm.
doing was wrong, but
Yep.
they wanted to make it. They wanted to make themselves and everybody else feel like they were doing a good thing.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Let's burn all their records
absolutely.
And it
because
goes
it's
back to
all savage
what we talked
trash.
about last week. You know, history is written by the conqueror, by the
Mhm.
victor. So the history that we go by now was written by the ones that, you know,
Yep.
the winners, basically.
Well,
So who knows what
all
civilizations and what great things have been lost, you
all
know?
those
Yeah.
books that the Spanish burned when they conquered, how much
Mhm.
you want to bet that some of that was like uh, trade information? Oh, we've
Oh,
been
I'm sure.
trading with these people.
And
Oh.
honestly, you know, a lot of what I have seen, it looks like maybe some of the South American tribes, like the Incan, Aztecs, Mayans, had their starts in the Adelants, you know, and were pushed south. And so, yeah, they probably did take a lot of that information that
Mhm.
would have been there, and that it's gone. We know the
Up
Spaniards
in
got rid of
smoke.
it.
I
They
found,
told us they got.
speaking of that, how far flung this is, in the process of looking for this stuff, I found where they found a Mayan spear point in Hawaii, a full
Wow.
one with the,
Oh yeah, you know
yeah,
I did see that. Was it kind of a clearish, almost a glass
uh-huh.
look?
It was
Yes,
a glass one. It
yes.
was
And they when they
handmade. It
showed
was
it
completely Mayan.
to
Yeah,
whoever they showed it to, I can't remember. They took it
yeah.
from him.
So if that isn't traveling and trade, I don't know what
Yep.
is.
Mhm.
So there's no
Yeah.
way.
I mean,
And there's a million other artifacts we could go over from every place. But, you know, like I said, we kind of kept this Egyptian because it's so big. I do
next week we can talk
actually,
about
speaking
Norse.
of,
Yes, I want to. That's another one I wanted to
speaking
go
of,
for.
yeah, speaking of Atlantis, I have an interesting little nugget. I don't know if it's anything, but I'm going to read it to you guys and see what you think.
It's Willie.
What's
What
up,
up,
Willie?
Willie?
Hey, you want to join us?
We'll let you on.
You
Yeah,
jump on.
you totally join us. So I found two instances where they found Egyptian coins, two coins. I'm going to read the first one real quick because it's really short. There wasn't a whole lot of information to it. It's the second one that I'm really interested in. So the first one was an Egyptian coin they found in northern Utah. It was found by a farmer in his field while he was plowing in 1897. His name was Victor Crockett. Local university took that one and it was never seen again, apparently.
Sounds
Shocker.
about right.
Shocker.
Yeah. The second one, however, I found it very interesting, and I'm going to do a little quick read for you right here.
You're more welcome anytime, brother.
Boo!
I think Jess is
Fear
saying,
the
man
beard.
up, get on here.
Lame. All right. Okay. So during the drilling of an artesian well at Lawn Ridge, 20 miles north of Peoria, Illinois, in August 1870, one of the workmen, Jacob W. Moffett, discovered a coin-like object. When the bit, because he was drilling, when the bit reached a depth of about 114 feet, the object was made, they found it, and the object was made from an indeterminate copper alloy about the size and thickness of a U.S. quarter of that period and was decorated on both sides. On one side, there were two human figures, one large and one small. The larger is wearing a headdress. This is usually described as a crowned woman holding a crowned child, but the sketch of it does not bear this out. It looks more like a warrior in a feathered headdress about to strike a fallen enemy. The other side is said to have depicted a central crouching animal with long pointed ears, large eyes and mouth, claw-like arms, and a long tail frayed at the tip, with a horse below it. And to the left again, it seems like it may be something a little different from this. So what he's saying is he's unsure if their description of it kind of describes it well. And all I could find of it was a little drawing, and it was poor. Around the edges of the medallion were obscure symbols that actually looked like hieroglyphs. It was of uniform thickness and appeared to have cut edges. The coin had been in the deposit, so where they had drilled down to was 200,000 to 400,000 years old in the deposit it was sitting in. All right. At a depth of 114 to 125 feet before its discovery. Now, that's all interesting. The coin was interesting, and it does look Egyptian. However, I was reading down past it, making sure I'd had all the information out of the article, and I got to the bottom, and there's a little space down there for people to put in a little comment or whatever they want to say. And there was one comment at the bottom of this thing, and the comment was old. It was from like back in the late 90s. And there was only one comment, and it had no likes or anything like that on it. It's the comment that kind of got me interested. And nobody said anything back to this dude. He just made the comment and vanished. It said, his name was Stuart Harris. Perhaps you might examine the coin more closely. It contains a map of how to cross the Atlantic and a detailed map of North America as it was in 10,600 BC. The text is standard Old European. It shows two islands that no longer exist, Atlantis and Friesland.
Oh, wow. I'd like to see it.
Dang.
Nobody made a comment on this.
Wow.
He literally just put it up there and then
just was gone. Who is this guy?
Yeah, and
oh my gosh.
I don't know, but is he full of crap? Is he just some kid who hopped up on there and was like, I'm going to make this sound cool, or does he know what he's talking about? And he just ghosted a site.
Specific.
Yeah, but in the 90s, how many kids really had access to the internet?
That's a good point.
Not a lot.
Yeah.
Because 97 was really when it was in our area was starting to be accessible.
And it was dial up.
Yeah.
It was terrible dial up.
Oh my gosh.
I mean,
I've got some dial up stories.
Yeah, I didn't get dial up until like 99.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just thought that was really. He was on a site that was meant towards Egyptian artifacts found in places they shouldn't be. And on this one page, this one comment, because I went through the rest of kind of the file on that website to see if I could see him pop up anywhere else. And he didn't. He's just floating there. And then he's gone. And I tried to look him up. I tried to like backtrack it a little bit or see if I could find him now.
Nothing?
There's a lot of Stuart Harrises, but none of them seem to
That's a
really.
very common name.
It is.
I wonder
And I
if
was
he
like-
would be. I wonder if he'd be like in the Epigraphic Society or anything.
Bees are.
I can
Just
hear
like
it. I
under
can
the
hear it in my head
names.
now.
You have mail.
Yeah.
I never did the AOL thing.
I can't even remember my first computer. It was like was it a 496 or something like that?
486.
486. Okay. So I had a 486 and I got 1 gig of memory in it. And the guy that built it for me laughed and he was like, I don't know why you think you need this much memory. You were never in a million years will you build this up. And that was in 1998.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now we're talking terabytes.
Remember all the discs and having to put them in just to like get your printer set up, and it would take like half a day.
I
Yep.
had a whole book, a notebook with little pockets in it. Had like 36 discs for Windows 3.1.
I had the fancy schmancy little like a recipe index box thing that kept my discs in it.
Yeah.
Oh yes, that's it.
I had one of those. I had one of those.
Yeah, those were second gen.
Yeah, that was second gen.
First gen was the little square. If you look for the youngsters out there, if you look on like you go to save your file and you see the little square.
There we go.
That's what they look like.
Yeah.
Yep, the little floppy disks and all that. Remember the Apple IIs?
Do you remember
I don't have
breaking
any.
and being
The big
so pissed
floppies.
because you lost all your info? Ugh,
Oh yeah.
that was terrible.
I hated it when I would lose the sleeve to the floppy disk because it had the type in you had to do to load it.
Yes.
You know,
Yep.
it was like Z432 hash something something blah, blah,
And 24
blah. And
other
you would always
digits.
screw up one of them and you'd have to go back through. Where did I screw up at? Where did I screw up at? Just to load that damn disk. And if you lost that instructions, you were screwed.
Yes.
We're boring.
I still remember
we're
how to
boring
log
the
into
youngins.
RingQuest on Apple.
Geeks, it's what's wrong with this.
Run RingQuest, run QQ.
Oh my god. Give me
We
nightmares.
should get back to the
about
topic.
DOS.
I don't know. That's almost as ancient to some of these kids. That's almost as ancient as the hieroglyphs.
You know what I did run across, and I'm referring back to Gloria Farley. She's like, I love her. But when she passed away, Barry Fell's son, Julian, actually did her memoriam in the 21st Century Science and Technology magazine. And he made a note just at the end of it, just kind of offhandedly, that Heavener, because that's where Gloria was from, she's actually the one that realized that the Heavener runestones were actually runestones because it was called Indian rock for a lot of years until she was looking at it one day and she's like, wait a minute. You know, she had seen runestones somewhere else and realized it was the same thing. But he says that Heavener may be considered a backwater locale, but it just happens to sit in the middle of a swath of several rivers that provide access from the Atlantic and Mississippi to the mid-continental high plains, where mountains do not form continuous barrier to transcontinental trekking. The ancients that followed these routes left behind an abundance of rock inscriptions that went unrecognized by the untrained American experts. This region is one of the most heavily inscribed regions of all of North America.
Well, yeah,
There are a lot around here.
think about where
There's
a lot of
tons.
these people were coming from. Northern Africa, Southern Europe. When you come across, it's almost natural for them to come up through the Gulf of Mexico. Then you've got that giant river that empties out into the Gulf that you can find by just following the mud trail.
Yep.
And sail right up it.
Yeah.
And, you
I
know,
would not be
they mark their way a lot of ways. If, you know, you go down so far and then you take off on a tributary and you go this way, you're going to mark your way back. so you can find your way home.
Seen those stories where they find the buried steamship 10 miles away from the river?
Mm-hmm.
One of these days, somebody's going to find something that they don't know what is. It's going to be an Egyptian bark or a Viking longship, and everybody is going to lose their minds.
Oh, they'll call it a fake immediately.
Or call it a fake immediately.
Who says they haven't found one?
Yeah, they have. I'm sure they
And
have.
they might
Yeah,
have.
they may have.
You know, with all the drought that was going on just this last year, there were ships popping up in places that nobody expected them to pop up.
Right.
If you think about it, I mean, the New Madrid earthquake changed the routing of the Mississippi.
Mm-hmm. It did.
I mean, what's the possibility that there could have been something under that water that got moved?
Absolutely.
Well, rivers do that naturally anyway. They're constantly in movement. I mean, if you look up here by Kansas City, they've been finding the riverboats.
That's
they
true.
found
There
3
is
so
one.
far.
Yeah.
And the mud preserves them beautifully.
Yeah, but they're not in the river. They're literally yards and yards and yards and yards away from the river, out in the middle of pasture lands and stuff now, because the rivers change their direction all the time. And where a riverboat was in the river at one point is now farmland. And every river does it. So who knows what kind of ships are hanging out in cornfields and, just in a bank somewhere. Tons, I'm sure. And like Mark said, the mud just saves them, especially up by the Kansas City area. There's a lot of clay.
Oh yeah, that's a good preservative.
I mean, they pulled up the Arabia steamboat many years ago, back in the 80s, and they were pulling up jars of pickles that were still edible.
Oh wow.
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, it was
the Arabia. Yeah.
Yeah. They pulled up I mean, you should go see the museum. It's amazing. It was a ship that was literally just a shipment of regular supplies that was supposed to come in. And there was clothing and shoes and buttons and perfumes. They have perfumes there. You can smell them still. They smell like lemon verbena.
That's cool.
Barrels of food, just all sorts of stuff. And it was all just perfectly preserved. And they have a museum up there. You could go see it. I suggest anybody who's got a little time is in that area, go check out the Arabia Museum. It's amazing.
It makes me wonder if something like that hasn't been found and the Smithsonian or some other agency swooped in and just disappeared it.
They're
famous for that.
Absolutely.
It's 1856.com. It's the Arabia Steamboat Museum. It's neat. It's worth a look because it shows them digging it out way out from the river.
Yeah. And they have 2 more they have found. They were waiting to get a little bit of extra money because they needed a larger museum, because as you're pulling that stuff out, it has to be sunk in water to keep it sealed. And then that slowly drained off, and the transition to dry has to be done a particular way, or it'll literally just crumble and fall apart. And so they have to have this like setup. Yeah, they have to have a setup ready to pull these boats out. So they know where they are. They've sunk down and found them. And they're just waiting to get them pulled up.
Go for it, Willie. He said, okay, this is super random,
What's up,
but I just
Will?
want to bounce the idea off all your beautiful minds. What's up?
I don't know. I might be more like Rain Man.
We're all waiting.
Let's go to Vegas.
I hope this is a good question. We're all waited with bated breath. Please put the podcast on hold.
He said we can use water to make hydrogen power, correct? So is it possible that the Grand Canyon was not formed from a massive meteorite hitting it, but was a massive lake that was drained and used to get off of... Where's the rest?
Crystal power.
Off of Earth for interplanetary travel.
Ooh.
They sucked a giant river dry.
You
with
know,
a straw.
That is a question with UFOs is, are they here for water sources? Is that how they refuel?
I mean, it could be.
A A lot of UFOs going in and out of lakes and
Yes.
ponds and things that are connected to the water cave system with the natural aquifer. So maybe.
Or seen pulling water
Maybe.
up to
Yeah.
them. That's a good one.
Yep.
Said, I mean, we do find a lot of fossils in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yay!
I'm
Points
not
to
gonna say
points
it's
to
wrong.
Hufflepuff.
Well, even the cave that we were talking about, where all the Egyptian things were found, the water was way up closer to where the cave was at one point. Before that, because that's the big
Lord.
thing is that the Colorado River cut it down that far. But who knows? How it really started.
I'd like to go search that with a drone,
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
because some of these new drones are just amazing and they're cheap.
Mm-hmm.
If you lose it, it's like, oh well.
We'll get another one.
I'm gonna get another
Yeah,
one.
I mean, a lot of this leads me to think, because some of the stuff that I watched, I was watching one. It was talking about the Ark,
Mm-hmm.
the Ark of the Covenant being in the United States and evidence of it and all that.
I saw that.
But they alluded a lot of like Hopi prophecy and Southwestern Indian tribe prophecies and all that, and they were all really similar, which makes sense. If they're all within that general area, you think their stories and their
Yeah, a lot of
prophecies
word
would
of
be
mouth.
similar. But it just makes you think. Willie put up. Have they ever really ran LiDAR over the Grand Canyon?
I'm sure they have, but they're probably not going to tell us what they found.
Probably.
Yeah. Wasn't that picture of the Ark found in the petrified forest, which is
somewhere
fairly
in there.
close to the Grand Canyon area, is it not?
Yeah, it was somewhere in there. Yeah, down in the Southwest.
So, and think about the timeline of the Ark of ancient Egypt.
Yep.
So, could
Well,
it have
he
been
was talking
shipped
about.
to the United States to hide it?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, and again, it was that unearthed or whatever, America Unearthed or whatever you guys were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
But they were saying there was an Egyptian princess that went with, was it Jeremiah, the prophet Jeremiah, or something along that lines to Ireland.
Mm.
And, there was rumor that it was buried there with her, and then it shipped over to the United States, and there was another theory that there were like a breakaway Hebrew faction that may have taken it and brought it over here as well. But still, you're looking at the timeline of like 9 or 10 BC. This is apparently before oceanic travel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Supposed.
Supposedly. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of evidence that these people traveled the hell out of the world.
I think they did. I think there's more than ample evidence, and I think we give ourselves a real disservice, because basically by denying it, we are denying 2,000 years at least, at the very least, of our own history, and that's sad.
And let's look at something we can all agree on. Humans are greedy.
Mm-hmm.
Not only are we nasty, and we're also greedy. And what do greedy people do? They look for new places to get stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to risk my life, but I'm going to invest in this ship, and I'm going to send you to look for more stuff that I can sell.
That's what the kings and queens did.
Yep.
So why don't you go? Nobody goes this way. Why don't you go over there and look for some stuff for me? You bring me back these great drugs, and I'm like, hell, I can sell the hell out of this.
Yep.
So I mean, or copper.
They brought back
gold.
The tobacco that and things that weren't available in that quality in Europe at the time.
Yeah, they're going, oh, this is good stuff, man.
I think it's hilarious that
tobacco beetles, that they have found in everywhere.
It's literally The fact that they downplay it and say that Egyptians and stuff had nothing to do with us whatsoever is absolutely ridiculous. Just look back at the Micmac.
Mm-hmm.
So across the board, all Indian tribes, America, South America, all the way up through Canada, not a one of them had a written language until they started taking on the English language and languages down in South America and stuff, until they started integrating. There is only one written language that has ever existed from a tribe, and it's from an Atlantic tribe, the Micmac,
Mm-hmm.
and it's goddamn hieroglyphics.
Yep.
They match perfectly. The only ones that don't match are literally just mirror images of the original hieroglyphics.
I'll have to look into that.
They were
It's
freaking
neat.
clear.
You need to read Barry Fell's American BC.
What
We'll
was
get
it
you a
called?
copy of it, Mark.
Micmacs.
Mm-hmm.
How do you spell
Yeah,
that?
so it's
M-I-C, M-A-C.
it's spelled. It's actually not. It's the M-I and then a space and then K-M-A-S is the original spelling for it. It's how you'll find all of the original
Micmac.
stuff for it.
I was going to
Yeah,
say,
you'll
and the
find
stuff
that
M-I-C, M-A-C.
yeah.
If you
So
Google
our
it, you're going to find it Micmac.
in our language in these times, they've simplified it to the M-I-C, M-A-K, or M-A-C.
M-O-U-S-E.
Yeah. Dirt.
Well, you know, there was a Father Milliard who was a Catholic that came to help Christianize the heathens, you know. And so he claims he's the one that taught the Micmacs how to write, help them make this own language. Well, that's not true, you know.
They had
they
it
didn't
before he was
translate it,
around.
too, which was way before. Yeah, no, he didn't. He lied. He's a big fat liar.
He did.
Well, because it doesn't match their narrative.
It didn't match their narrative, and it didn't make
Exactly.
him look good. It made him look better, you know, that he showed all these guys how to write these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can see it right there.
Yeah.
Now, another interesting thing I found when I was getting off the actual artifacts and going to the hieroglyphics and the petroglyphs, I found a number of them that are literally treasure maps, as if the Egyptians had come in and had left knowledge hidden for other people to find later. Special sauce.
Oh, yes.
Damn it,
Yeah.
Willie, you've made me hungry. I need a Big Mac and a 20-pack of chicken nuggets and some French fries.
Oh,
Like yesterday.
Okay,
Oh.
so back on track.
Go, Jess.
Will is getting us off track. Will needs to stop. Okay. So two of them, I picked out two because there's a handful. I found like 5 or 6 of them, but there was 2 of them that really stood out that had very, very direct instructions. They were very clear. So far as I know, no one's ever found the treasure, but there are people hunting. And they call it a treasure, but really in the instruction, it kind of calls them like
You're not sorry.
tablets or knowledge. Yeah, we know, Will.
Anywho.
Anywho, so the first one is in Cedar City, Utah. It's just outside of Cedar City, Utah. And in its translation, it says, hack a straight path eastward along the face of this rock, 864 cubits, searching on the center summit for a cap rock, which covers an old mine and a burial ground of the ancients, where men, women, and children are buried. Take a ladder and go to the bottom of the hole, then go 64 cubits, breaking down the sidewall, which enters you into a room where there are records laid away to the god. Right?
That's
Old
pretty specific.
hieroglyphics. Yeah, they've dated them. They go back. So this isn't like something new within the last 400, 500 years. It's well past that. And just for
I guess-
reference, I went and looked it up. A cubit is 20.5 inches, just so you kind of know.
So just short of 2 feet.
Yeah.
I guess I've got a question though. I mean, if you think about it, and you hear all of these other artifacts, one comes to mind, like the hammer in the rock. How accurate is the carbon dating? I guess would be my question. How can they?
But they don't really.
There's a
It's
different
not
way
really
to
a carbon
date some of
dating.
that. Other
Yeah.
than carbon dating.
So what
I
they
can't remember the
do
name of
is
it.
they really date the layers they found on top of the inscribed sections. So where it's dug down in, they go down in there and they take samplings from that so they can see how long it's been sitting on top of those inscriptions, is really how they do it.
Right.
Because you can't judge the rock. The rock is
Right.
going to be way, way older than even
Billions.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they dig down through the lichen and God, there's another name for the weathering that gathers in those, but that's what they will date. They will get back to the closest to the stone and date that.
There's
That's really how
dating. There's also the potassium argon dating, and then uranium lead
Yeah.
dating. So there's a couple of different ways they can go about dating rocks and fossils.
Mm-hmm. And they can also, I've heard, this is kind of interesting. Just recently, they've started doing this. They can, if it was chiseled out with any sort of a metal tool, they often find little bits of that metal and they can test the metal.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And they find that often in there if it was metal tooling that had accomplished it. So there's that. Yep. The second one that I found that was super interesting was in Fillmore, Utah. And this one said, to dig out of earth precious garlands, everlasting mineral records, which are housed in natural stone chamber. Begin a square land measurement, descending from which is in front of petroglyphs or rock at the horizon merger, orienting it with the four cardinal points. To gain entrance, measure the two sides towards the constellation of the Great Bear. The square land measurement has crossing diagonals with intersecting points by placing the two sides closing the square land measurement. Measure 100 cubits per side, retreating down the center summit to remove from place of concealment the metal tablets. All of these places seem to be holding like information like mini libraries that the Egyptians were meant to come back, or somebody who could read Egyptian could come back and re-find later on down the road. Cubits is an Egyptian measurement, and a lot of the symbols and things inside were just purely Egyptian. So it makes you wonder if like some of these travelers that were coming through decided to drop off little things for somebody later on to get.
You know what it makes me think
what
of,
kind
and
of,
I don't know why, is kind of the seed repository up in is it Antarctica?
Yeah.
Like they're putting this stuff different places that they'll remember how to get to in case something happens and they lose all their information. Yep. There's always going to be that record over here.
Hey, Willie asked what the word God meant in Old Aramaic. We were talking about it last episode. Do you remember?
Yahweh? Was it? No.
Yahweh?
Yahweh?
I remember what he's talking about.
What was that tool?
Yeah.
I don't know if it was Aramaic, but the word didn't mean just God. It meant like the wise ones or something like that.
Oh, yeah. What was that?
Oh, okay. So we were talking about Paul Willis and his when he went back and took the old Hebrew and re-ciphered it and realized that the word God, and I can't remember what it was in old Hebrew.
It was wise ones or something.
It was something like that, yeah.
Well, yeah, it meant literally the wise ones, but when the church had taken it over and deciphered it, they deciphered it how they wanted into 5 different things. And when they did use it as God, they only used it as the one God. instead of gods.
Elohim. Elohim.
Yeah, Elohim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Elohim or Elam.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what we were talking about. The Paul Paul Wallace, I believe. Yeah.
I hope
Very
that helped
interesting
you out,
set
Willie.
of books. Yeah.
It was in my notes.
Um,
Along with everything else. Shocked I
Yeah,
found
he
it.
said he was bringing it up because Jess said something along the lines of it being left for God or being placed by the god.
Yeah. But in Egyptian, it just depends on whichever god they had at the time. Or maybe a god that was in charge of records or whatever it was they were hiding in that particular cave, or
There probably is a god
who
of
knows?
records. The Egypts had gods for everything.
Probably.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'll look it up.
Google's great. Well, actually, I've been using DuckDuckGo lately.
So
Thoth.
another interesting
Thoth-
thing
Thoth
that I
was
found.
records. Sacred texts.
Yeah. Another interesting one I found, and this is going, so we're off of treasures now. So there was a set of petroglyphs found in the early 1970s in Arkansas, right near the river. And it's called the Bluff Shelter Star Map. And this is the first time they've actually seen an incidence of this. The petroglyphs represent all the constellations in the sky seen during the months of February and March in that exact spot. So if you stand there in February, March, and you look up, you will see all the stars that are represented there, but they made their own versions of the constellations. So the constellations we know now aren't exactly, they made kind of different shapes, but Orion was there and the belt was there, and, just different kind of symbols for them. And they also found that a few of those star constellations, the creatures they made to create them, were found in Heavener and the Spiro Mountains. They didn't previously know what those meant. So either they were seen by Indians in the Arkansas area and recarved them at the Heavener and Spiro Mound site, or whoever put the star map there off the Arkansas River also traveled up this way and was involved with the Indian groups up in our area too.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
So, yeah. So that was kind of cool that they found at least the beginnings of those carvings in another place that were brought into Oklahoma.
That's cool.
Well, and
there's
a lot of stuff that's been found in Oklahoma.
There's carvings of elephants that were found in the plains I think
now
it was Iowa or Illinois, and
all over the place. I found a story we're going to have to do on that. That's African American.
Yes,
mm-hmm.
Because they're like they had to come here.
Oh my gosh, it's insane. That story is insane. I can't wait to do that one. I'm so excited because I'd never heard of this before.
Everybody loves to hear us
elephants.
geeking out on this stuff.
African elephants in the U.S. Well, before it was the U.S., but African elephants. And they have freaking found their bones. And every time they find them, they play them off, or they say they're an ancient, like form of woolly mammoth that was here. They found them all the way up into Kentucky. They have found them at the Four Corners area, where's the brunt of them are.
The Ankh?
Yeah.
ANKH. I think I spelled it.
Ankh.
Those are all over the U.S. too.
Yes.
You want to talk about Egypt and So one of the exciting ones I found was what I think is where an actual ancient Egyptian is buried in the U.S. I think on the travels, one of them died, and they were high up enough in the hierarchy that they got a proper burial. So this is in Utah. They call it the Utah Glyphs Burial Site. So there's a set of glyphs on the side of it's like a little overhanging cliff. And up above it on the hill is another hill, like a mound that's been made, like a burial area. And the translation says, Anubis of this powerful person demands offerings by authority's decree, a quarter hecate or corn and precious metals and what looks like a burial area setting up on top. Thankfully and unthankfully, no one has ever decided to dig into that side of that little mountain, that little hill. Yay, because you don't want to disturb.
It makes perfect sense because Anubis is the god of death, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. But it's written in perfect hieroglyphics.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I wonder if maybe on their travels, a true Egyptian had passed, you know, things. I'm sure that happened, but he was high up enough in the hierarchy to get a proper burial like this.
It has the juice.
It's corn. I can tell you all about it. It has 3 juices.
Oh my God, corn!
Well, it makes sense. They would have asked for corn because that corn was really favored in that area at that time, especially by the Native Americans. You used it for trade. People needed corn. They made everything with it. So it makes sense that maybe if they'd been, maybe if they had been in the area long enough, they knew that anybody coming to this burial would have access to corn. So if you're in a new area, you would ask for whatever was most precious to them in that area to leave offerings. So that's cool. It was really cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
And it makes me wonder, like, if they dug down, would they find an Egyptian?
We should go douse it.
I mean, I'm sure they probably couldn't mummify him like needed be. Like, you know, I'm sure,
like
you know, on their travels. Yeah, and you know, I'm sure he was probably buried with some artifacts that he would have been a part of his family stuff. So
do a little ground penetrating radar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of really want to go dig it up and probably get cursed. I'd probably die.
I want a LiDAR drone. Have you seen those?
Yeah,
a LiDAR drone.
All kinds of stuff.
I have not seen
one.
You
can buy a drone with LiDAR on it.
That's cool.
Really?
Oh no.
I just wish I could witness the first person who was able to pop a corn seed and see it transform into popcorn. Mind blown.
Right? Oh my gosh.
The original form of corn was not edible. The South American Indians actually used selective breeding to create an edible product.
It almost looked like a piece of wheat with just little kernels stuck to it. What they say it tasted like, it was something strange.
Ass.
Ass?
Ass.
Pretty strange tasting.
Not gonna find out. I can't remember what they said though. Thanks, Mark.
I know it's a family show, but gosh darn it.
By golly.
I'm sure it didn't taste very good.
No, I don't think it did. I can't remember what they said it tasted like now. It'll come to me here in a little bit. I'll pop it up.
I told you.
Everything. Oh, yeah. Was it? So I think some of it was, Willie.
I think it was.
Yeah.
Comes in all different colors.
You know, they had to be really hungry to eat something that was blue and tasted like ass.
You got to do what you got to do.
That's right. You know, if all you got around is some ass, I guess that's what you're going to eat.
Look what you've done, Mark.
I know. I'm a bad man. I don't know why you guys put up with me. I don't know how
You can pull
Chris
up
puts up with me.
if you Google how corn began. There's pictures of what it looked like, and it was weird looking.
Well, we can do that.
Yeah, check
I'm
it
pulling
out.
up right now. See if I can find it.
It's strange, and I can't remember what they said it tasted like now. That's going to bother me because it was odd. Whatever it was.
I'm surprised they ate popcorn. Like I can imagine, like what Will said, the first time one accidentally popped, like it got too near the fire or whatever. I would think that they would have been like, "It's a demon. There's a demon in my corn."
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Why would you put it in your mouth?
Yeah, that's weird looking.
Maybe it shocked them so bad their mouth was wide open and a piece fell in, and they were like, "Well, this isn't bad."
I don't know.
Probably not. But, you know,
a little sprig could be good. Dip it in some butter and some salt. It'd be good.
I want to know how they invented butter.
I don't want to know how they invented it. There's some things that we just don't need to know how they got here.
No, we probably really don't want to know.
Oh my gosh.
You know, it could have happened during an earthquake and the cow gave butter because of all the shaking. I don't know. Or maybe after a stampede.
Yeah.
What the hell's coming on out of my cow?
Out of your cow?
It's coming out of my cow.
I'll stick it in my mouth and find out.
Oh no!
Oh! I've got a clay jug of milk in my cart with a solid axle, and by the time I got where I was going, I had this strange.
Oh my God, we are so far off topic.
What are we really? Well, yeah, this time
We're talking about shaking cows and eating ass. And we started
that
artifact.
10 times worse.
Thanks, Willie. You got us in trouble.
Oh no!
Wowzers! Some
I'm that teacher.
Family entertainment
like
here.
That teacher that everybody loved because you could get them off on a sidetrack and not have to do anything. That's
yeah, and then that teacher gets fired.
I found it. Corn used to taste like raw potatoes.
Well, fair enough.
Ew.
Starch.
Yeah.
Well, I guess butter could fix that. I was going to say butter wouldn't fix that. It might.
Butter and salt fix anything.
You heat it up, it'd be fine.
Maybe it was just used as a filler, like in stews and stuff. It was just something to fill it out.
You know what? It probably was. Honestly.
That probably, yeah.
And somebody fell asleep and their stew burned off and it popped. Or maybe they dripped some in the fire and it popped.
Well, that would be
that's
cool.
actually more plausible.
That's plausible. Actually.
What if they grabbed some of it and to try to make a fire and it popped? That'd be scary, wouldn't it? Put all this stuff on there and it's
I remember my
go.
dad saying they used to pop Milo like popcorn.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Huh. I didn't know it'd pop.
Never tried it, but that's
Things
what he
we
said.
learn.
Yeah.
So now, what other kind of artifacts have they found, Jess? Let's get back on track.
So many. I didn't write down any more than what I gave you. All I have left are like the story hieroglyphs that I kind of jotted down. They found a set of hieroglyphs in Silver City, New Mexico. It was found by a miner working a claim. It was a little cliff ledge just off of the shaft for his mine. And there was 2 sets of them. The first set spoke of a great flood.
Okay, well, that's in every civilization.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And the second one, and I'm going to take this with a grain of salt because
And a bit of butter.
they were really trying to pursue a biblical theme to these. The person who was writing this was really trying to push their narrative. Because all it said about the first one was that it spoke of a great flood in that area. And he was trying to spin it as, Noah and the ark and all this stuff, even though it said nothing about any of that. And the second one was a story, and I will admit it was kind of close to it, but the story could be kind of pop up anywhere, was much like the story of Moses and the bulrushes. But it wasn't truly that. So I think this dude was just really trying to push his narrative and try to make it these hieroglyphs biblical, which I really don't think they were. There's several other petroglyphs with hieroglyphs in that area, and they have nothing to do with anything biblical. You would think that if they were all in this general area, they would have been done by the same group of people, and they would have all had kind of the same style and sound to them. Yeah. Yeah. And you'll find those everywhere too. The story ones.
Mark, that second picture that I sent you, you might pull that up because it's kind of interesting. They took the style of hieroglyphs that were found in Iowa, and they basically made this little table and showed you've got the palace style from Egypt. It's the second picture.
Yeah, it switched places on me.
Uh-oh. They've got the formal palace style of hieroglyphs, and then they show the informal style of hieroglyphs from Egypt, and then they show what they found in Iowa. And you can tell by looking at them that they are very similar enough to where I can see how someone that is proficient in reading hieroglyphs could have looked at the Davenport stele and been like, oh yeah, this is completely readable.
Yeah. Interesting on that point, Pam. I had read an article by a gentleman who reads these for a living, and he made this big long spiel about how he hates it when other people kind of look at those hieroglyphs that aren't exactly right and they're not exactly the same. And he's like, hey, listen, so the hieroglyphs that we know of that actually came from Egypt were worked on by artisans who were doing it because they knew it was going to be something permanent, and they were done very well because they had time. He said, out on these rocks, out in the middle of everywhere, different hardnesses of rocks, different styles of rocks, and you don't have the time to sit there and carve on them day after day, week after week, and you don't have the tools. And a lot of the times, with the harder rocks like the granites and stuff like that, a straight line is easier to do than a curve.
And that would be
in a hurry.
If you look at the palace style and consider that in our handwriting.
Oh, Pam froze up.
Uh-oh. Well, people have compared my handwriting to hieroglyphs.
Are we back? I don't know where we went. That was weird.
There you are. There you are.
I mean,
gotcha.
That would be like calligraphy as opposed to block writing, and saying, oh, it's this can't be anything because it's not calligraphy. That's just crazy. Everyone's handwriting is different. I'm sure
exactly
that back then.
Yeah.
No two artists.
That was his second point. Yeah. Everybody learns a little bit differently, and everybody has their own style of writing. I could write one word and Pam could write the exact same word, and they won't look alike. Anybody viewing it will go, oh, well, that's the English language, and it's obvious this is what they're saying, but they won't look exactly alike. And the same thing with hieroglyphs. They were like, really, it was the person, how did they learn it? How did they remember learning it? Maybe they weren't as educated as someone else, but they knew the basics of it and were just getting their point across. Yeah.
Yeah. Or they were the person that was in the group that had the best memory for those particular symbols.
Yeah, exactly.
Not everybody is.
Maybe they were the special
learned.
ed Egyptians.
Right.
No, they were on
Mark.
the short bus.
With me.
With the liquors.
They were in the short boat.
The short boat?
They were in the short boat.
They're barks.
Oh
Short bark.
no.
They're
They were the
barks.
short bark.
I bet they were barking.
Oh goodness, this went bad.
It did go bad. And I apologize.
Quickly.
I apologize because that was uncalled for, and I am
But
sorry.
it was funny
Although
as hell, dude.
it was funny. Yes, it was wrong, but funny.
I'll be right back.
It was very funny. And something that's interesting about the Micmac too, their language, some of the questions that Barry Fell asked, basically to prove his points. Yes, Willie, absolutely. The first question that occurs is, are the Micmac and related Algonquins the descendants of ancient settlers of Egypt? And the answer is certainly no, because their language is Algonquin, number one. But for the writing system, is it an ancient acquisition from the Algonquins? And the answer is apparently yes. These words are dissimilar to French and English words for writing, but sometimes, like we saw from that list of words, they are extremely similar to Egyptian words for their ideas. So, and what's fun is, like, the Donald Yates, he is the DNA specialist, and he's going back basically and going through all of Rafinesque's things that he put together of how people came to be where they were in the world, and he's proving him accurate on a lot of things. DNA wise. What is that?
Shinerbach.
Shinerbach.
Oh, see,
Hey,
I'm
Willie, you can come hang out with me.
illiterate when it comes to beer.
Mine's gone.
I was
I
at a
got water
whiskey
with my
tonight,
big
so
old get in loser sticker on it.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was interesting on the Micmac point. Lost my train of thought anyway.
there's several tribes up the Mississippi and up the Ohio River that have ancient Egyptian language mixed in with theirs.
Yes.
Actual language.
Mm-hmm. There is.
Very, very, very similar. And that, well, you're getting up into the mound builders and the pyramids of Kentucky and all of that. So obviously they had an influence in that area too.
So I guess I wonder, going back to the annals of Kentucky, could the ancient Egyptians be what they're calling the Atlans?
Well, the Egyptians were a colony of the Atlans.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean,
anything's possible.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And that's the fun part. They're going through and with DNA right now. And
that's a good question, Willie.
It is.
Uh-oh. My battery died.
Uh-oh. Seeing if I'm missing anything out of my notes.
Willie said, so will this lend credence to the idea that someone educated the Egyptians in other parts of the world at the same time?
Well, it's kind of, if you look at the fact that a lot of, there's a word, it's called diffusionists, and that's for the people that look at, especially epigraphists, that look at things and try to determine if things all began around the world at the same time, kind of like a download basically into all these different cultures, or if it actually kind of started somewhere. And what we're seeing by what we feel was travel that came from Egypt and from different old world countries, that more than likely it all started old world and they brought those ideas here. And that's not to say that the Native Americans didn't have the ability to do these things. They completely did. They have done amazing things. And there's a lot of evidence that there were very good relationships between the old world travelers and the Native American culture. They just enhanced each other. So if you have someone coming from somewhere else, I don't think it all began at the same time in different places. I think the information was passed along, and just shared, like you share with anyone. You meet someone new, and like we're doing tonight, we're sharing information with other people and teaching them what we know. I think it's the same thing.
Yeah, well, it said so, like the 100 mice thing or 100 monkeys. Once a group of them figured out what, without any communication with the other ones, they were able to solve the puzzles. Suited humans receive some sort of download.
Yeah, that's kind of the thought when it comes to psychics and things like that too, that there's like this basic human consciousness out there that we come from and we all go back to. And a lot of psychics just have a better connection than other people do to that. Who knows? There's like, birds, how do they know how to migrate? How do they know to do anything? It's just built into them. It's a good question. I don't know. What do you think, guys?
I think it's plausible. I mean, because the 100 monkeys thing is real.
It is.
So I mean, I absolutely think it's plausible. There's some kind of what am I looking for? Ether or something like that. Where people get downloads from. I absolutely believe that.
That makes more sense than a lot of things do when it comes to how do people know things they shouldn't know? How do people remember past lives? Where does it come from? It comes from somewhere. And maybe it may not be exact that, but for our understanding, it's a very good concept to help us figure it out. But, I use the word diffusionists, and basically that was the idea that this information was brought from somewhere else and then diffusely, given out. And I think that's kind of the idea that Barry Fell and Gloria Farley and some of these other guys that we've been leaning pretty heavily on tonight, that's the ideas that they had. And that's the thought process that they follow. And I'm a pretty big fan of it personally. What do you think, Jess? I think they left it us.
They did. They left us here all alone.
What?
With Will. Oh,
I'm
no.
back.
Oh, there he is.
Mark's trying to get in. My wife was
Will.
talking to me for a second. What was a good guy, man? And he said, take it a step further. They actually found that when DNA is separated from a human and you affect it, it will still affect that DNA separated from the original source. That's mind blowing.
Yeah, physics, quantum physics. Look at what they're finding out now. Not only is something affected right next to itself, it doesn't matter where it is in the world, or in the universe. It could be on the other side of the universe, and it's still going to affect each other, which that is amazing. And that's the basis for time travel, for, anything like that. And that's incredible to me.
Yeah. So, I mean, I do that. And that's another thing I really think is plausible to get that download because of quantum, the quantum theory or quantum mechanics.
I just wish I had the brain to wrap around that because
there's so much.
I just, I don't have the brain for it.
I mean, I don't even know that I
understand it.
Yeah, I don't know that I would say I understand it.
Oh, I definitely don't.
I don't think anybody truly does.
They don't. But I know a lot of people have better grasp on it than I do, for sure.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that we can't still enjoy it.
Sorry, guys, I'm having network difficulties.
Did you fall out of your chair, Mark?
Sorry, Mark.
I think he did.
Oh,
He
he's stuck.
froze.
He's having problems.
Oh
Yep.
no! But his background's fabulous.
It looks like the Anubis and the Queen there are like bopping him in the head. And that one's like sticking something in his ear or something. I don't know.
He needs to lift up a little bit.
That's funny.
Yeah, I think it could be a mix of everything. So there was trade going on. People freaking use boats and them saying, well, there's nothing to show for it. Well, they weren't made of rocks. You can't float
Right.
a rock boat. They were made of wood, and wood
Yep.
deteriorates and it goes away. And there are petroglyphs of ships representing what they used to travel with. So them implying that they didn't have ships back then is just redonkulous. It's just
Yeah.
idiotic and stupid.
I kind of have a problem with that theory
but
as
yeah.
well.
Yeah. But I believe in the hive mind too, the general consciousness
Yes.
that everybody is connected to. I do believe that's kind of how psychics and things work. Even Pam and I have the tiniest little bit of abilities kind of picking up and feeling things. And I think that's where that comes from.
Mhm.
I
I would
also
agree with
think
that.
that's where people who have artistic abilities or writing abilities, people who imagine new things and bring them into this world, I think that is where they gather that from. Kind of like the ether,
Or the
like you
muse.
said, Phil.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe
mean,
that's where that's comes from. We're all connected in some way. I mean, that's got to be how what is that app? I lost the name of that app. How that app works.
Randonautica?
Yeah, Randonautica. It delves into that consciousness.
Oh yeah.
You're just putting that out there for it to grab onto and pinpoint where you need to go is enough. So, yeah, I think it's everything. And I think we've repeated this hundreds and hundreds of times.
Yep.
Oh, I'm sure.
I think civilizations have come and they have fallen, and then they've come back again and they've fallen, and it's probably a little different every time.
And then ice
Yep.
ages have come and gone, and they've just
Yep.
completely obliterated everything.
Oh yeah.
But the rocks themselves.
Mhm.
Yep. But I think it's a good spot to leave it on this note. You know, I mean,
All right, I say on.
what? What'd you say?
Hoobah!
Please continue. I've tried 4 different connections. This is the first one I got to reconnect.
Chris
Oh,
had
Willie,
posted,
you'll have
and
her.
I just now saw the text from her that she didn't know if it was her internet or not, but said we kept freezing up and she got kicked out. So
Yeah,
darn it.
I Cox wouldn't stay connected. AT&T wouldn't stay connected. I tried the neighbor's house, and
Willie, have you seen the Van Gogh down by the river? It's like the best. It's Chris Farley and Van Gogh.
oh,
Yes.
Yeah.
I have no idea what we've been talking about for the last 5 minutes. So
Well, we were just talking about
We-
the ether and kind of quantum mechanics and how
Hive
kind of
mind.
everything's the hive mind thing and all that. You know,
well, and
Willie said he's never heard
You know,
of it.
You need to look it up, Willie. It's hilarious.
But yeah, I think that's a good spot to leave it. You know, I mean, like you said, Jess, we've said it a million times on here that it's all connected. You know, even talking Edward Casey, you know, talking about the hieroglyphs and stuff in the Grand Canyon and all that.
Mhm. Oh,
There's-
speaking of that, really quick before we leave off.
Yeah.
He made a second one. There's a second one. that I didn't even find until like right before the show. I was kind of flipping through and putting some highlights in to make sure I knew where my part was, and I didn't realize there was a little second section. I'll read this off really fast. It's short. Regardless of the outcome, there are other tantalizing clues that the Egyptian presence was absolutely in ancient Arizona, northwest of Tucson, in the I don't know how to say this, the Tortolita Mountains is a site known as the Zodiac Ridge. Have you heard of this, Pam?
I have not.
It's a 180-foot rock circle with over 800 stones. It was found several hundred years ago and has been investigated by archaeoastronomers. It contains alignments to the 18.61-year lunar cycle, the solstices, the equinox, and several stars, including the constellation of Orion. Petroglyphs that have Egyptian hieroglyphs have been found nearby. Casey stated that a shrine was made in the Arizona area by the Egyptian envoy in 10,000 BC.
Really?
And that's where he pinpointed it to. And they found it a couple hundred years ago. Yeah.
Interesting.
He didn't know anything about it when he made the prediction. It was just a little, what they thought was an Indian site at the time.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
I can't help
Isn't
but
that
wonder.
insane?
Yeah.
That is nuts. Okay. Let's understand go down by the
That's
river,
awesome.
Willie.
What's up, Chad? Yep. I don't know. I think that leaves more food for thought for next week. So I think we're going to continue this and find something different, man. There's so much out there.
Oh my gosh. So we'll climb out of Egypt and we'll head to other
where do we
places.
want to go next?
And I so want to do the elephants. Let's just bring something to the table. Just bring something. And we'll just go to town for the next couple of shows until we run out.
Oh,
I'm gonna do like Africans. I don't know. I'll do maybe some runes, or I don't know.
Because I still want to hit like the Vikings. Make our way into Big Macs.
You need to get some dinner, Will.
It would probably last that long, though. I mean,
and the Asian influence, the Asian artifacts that have been found. That'd be another one to go towards.
Yeah.
I think
that one intrigues me because I haven't heard much about that one.
There's a bunch.
Yeah. I think that Will's blood sugar is low and that he needs to go eat. Eventually, we need to talk. This whole discussion is about rewriting our history, and at some point, we need to talk about the Kennewick Man.
Ooh, definitely.
Yeah.
Something that even our ancestral tribes are denying because they don't want it to change their history. So that, at some point, we're going to have to touch on.
Yeah, sounds good. With that said, I think, Mark's kind of back. He's there. Can't hear him.
He's getting a little leany.
Is that like the thinking man?
Are you froze, Mark? Or are you just meaning? I can't tell.
He's froze.
Yeah. Anyway, you guys, thanks for hanging out with us, and thanks for being, enlightening. I mean, there's so much, like you said, there's so much to share, so many different things found here in the United States. And it's just, it's mind boggling because a lot of the stuff I've not heard of. This isn't my necessarily wheelhouse, but it fits, it fits everything that we talk about here. Oh man, I need to, Chad said I need to clip that pic of Mark and use it as an overlay. But yeah, I mean, everything we've talked about really fits because it makes you question our current reality.
It does.
What we're being taught is reality anyway. Hey, there he is for a second anyway.
Yay!
Yay! I have had nothing but bad luck the last 30 minutes.
Darn it.
But we're just closing out, Mark. But hang out. Hang out with
All
us.
right.
Come back. I mean, continue out with this this series that we're working on. I don't think it would be as enlightening without Jess and Pam. But so hang out. Wait for them to join us some more. We've got a lot of shows we're talking about, and just moving down the road. There's some ideas I've got that I want to touch on that these ladies could probably help us out with. With that being said, do us a favor, go check, come over and join us on the Facebook group, What If Tomorrow podcast group. Reach out to us if you need to contact us, whatiftomorrowpc@gmail.com, or shoot us a messenger on Facebook. I guess with that being said, everybody, thank you for hanging out with us. Thank you for hanging out in the chat and adding to the conversation. And we will catch you guys next episode.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.